The late afternoon sun cast long, golden streaks across the suburban street as 8-year-old Mia stood on the sidewalk, clutching a plastic tray of neatly stacked cookie boxes. Her small hands trembled slightly in the crisp autumn air, not from the cold, but from exhaustion and the gnawing feeling of rejection. Door after door had closed with polite smiles or hurried excuses, leaving her earnings light and her spirit heavier with each step. Yet, her wide, hopeful eyes never dimmed as she adjusted the sash over her shoulder that read Troop 421. Determined to meet her goal of selling 100 boxes to fund her dream camp trip, she inhaled deeply and knocked on yet another door, her breath fogging in the chill. Sophie was small for her age, with a cascade of auburn curls that peeked out from beneath a knitted beanie. Her cheeks were rosy, partly from the biting cold and partly from her determination. Dressed in a second-hand winter coat that hung a little too loose on her frame, she exuded a quiet resilience that made people take a second look. She had been out there for hours, standing on the corner where her quiet suburban street met a bustling thoroughfare. The neighborhood was lined with bare-branched trees and snow-dusted lawns, a stark contrast to the distant hum of the city that pulsed in the background. The tinny sound of cars passing by occasionally broke the rhythm of her polite calls. "Would you like to buy some cookies?" Sophie's stand wasn't anything special, just a small folding table with a mismatched tablecloth and a variety of cookie boxes stacked neatly in rows. The cookies weren't her own creation. They were standard fundraiser fare, the kind that kids sold for clubs or school trips. But Sophie wasn't raising money for an extracurricular activity. She was saving for something bigger, a chance at a different future. Her parents had told her countless times, "We'll do our best to help you." But Sophie had overheard enough late-night conversations to understand how tight things were. College was a dream she had to start building now, even if it was with cookies sold one box at a time. The day had been slow, and the cold gnawed at her resolve. Sophie was just about to pack up when the Tesla rolled to a stop. Her eyes widened as the driver's door opened and Elon Musk emerged, the setting sun catching the sharp lines of his face. He glanced at the table, his gaze shifting to Sophie, whose breath hitched as she realized this wasn't just any passerby. For a moment, the ordinary scene of a cookie stand on a suburban street felt charged with the promise of something unexpected. Catalyst/inciting incident. The Tesla's quiet hum ceased as Elon Musk stepped out, his presence commanding attention without effort. He was dressed casually, his expression neutral yet observant. Sophie's breath caught as she instinctively straightened her posture. She wasn't one to recognize many famous people, but Elon Musk's face was unmistakable, plastered across billboards, magazine covers, and news segments that her dad often watched during dinner. Elon glanced at her table, his brow furrowing slightly as he read the hand-painted sign, "Cookies for College Fund." His gaze lingered on the stacks of cookie boxes, then shifted to Sophie's earnest, hopeful face. "Hello," he said, his voice calm yet warm. "What kind of cookies are these?" Sophie's mind raced, unsure whether to be starstruck or simply grateful for the attention. "They're, fundraiser cookies," she stammered, her breath forming a soft cloud in the cold air. "I'm saving for college. They're $5 a box." Elon tilted his head slightly, his curiosity piqued. "College? Huh. That's quite an ambitious goal for someone your age." She nodded quickly, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "I really want to go. My parents said they'd help, but I thought, maybe I could start saving now." For a moment, the street seemed to quiet around them, as though the world had paused to listen. Elon looked at her with an intensity that made Sophie feel both exposed and encouraged. He didn't laugh or brush her off as some adults might have. Instead, he leaned closer to the table, studying her display with genuine interest. "How many boxes have you sold today?" he asked, his tone soft but serious. "Only 3, Sophie admitted, her voice dropping. "Most people just walk past." Elon straightened, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Let's change that." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. "I'll take the whole table." Sophie blinked, stunned. "All of them? But that's like 50 boxes." He nodded, and I'd like to make an additional contribution. College is important, and I think your initiative deserves support. As he handed over the cash, Sophie felt a warmth spread through her chest, not just because of the sale, but because someone had seen her effort and believed in her dream. The moment felt surreal, but it was only the beginning of something far greater. As the Tesla pulled away, Sophie stood frozen, clutching the cash Elon Musk had handed her. It was more money than she had ever seen at once, and the weight of it felt both thrilling and daunting. The icy wind whipped at her cheeks, but she hardly noticed. Her mind buzzed with conflicting emotions. Did that really just happen? She whispered to herself, glancing down at the crumpled bills. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. But alongside the excitement came a wave of doubt. What would she do now? The money was a start, but it was nowhere near enough for her college fund. And what if people thought she only succeeded because of a chance encounter with someone famous? Would her efforts even matter without that moment? She packed up her table slowly, the cold seeping through her gloves. Inside her modest home, Sophie spread the cash on the kitchen table, her parents watching in shock. Her mother's eyes brimmed with tears as she listened to Sophie recount the day's events, while her father paced the room, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is incredible," her mother said, her voice quivering. "But, Sophie, are you sure you're ready for this? College is still years away. You're just a kid." Her father chimed in. "What if people don't buy cookies without a story like this? You'll face tough competition, Sophie. And managing money like this, it's a lot for someone your age." Their words stung, though Sophie knew they were trying to protect her. She didn't have answers to their questions, and that uncertainty gnawed at her confidence. She wrestled with feelings of inadequacy, wondering if she could truly achieve her goal or if this moment was a fluke. Outside, the world continued to turn, indifferent to Sophie's aspirations. Other kids her age were focused on school, playing video games, or hanging out with friends. Sophie often felt the weight of her choice to step onto this unfamiliar path. Balancing schoolwork, her cookie sales, and the expectations she placed on herself was a daunting prospect. The challenge wasn't just the logistics of selling cookies or raising money. It was the internal battle, fighting the doubts that whispered she wasn't enough, that her dreams were too big for a girl her size. Sophie realized that believing in herself might be the hardest challenge of all. But deep down, she also knew she couldn't stop now. She had taken the first step, and the journey ahead, however uncertain, was hers to face. Sophie threw herself into the challenge with a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. The money Elon Musk had given her became the seed of her ambition, but she understood that it was just the beginning. That evening, after her parents went to bed, she sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by a notepad, markers, and her laptop. She scribbled ideas for signs, mapped out potential sales routes, and even drafted a letter to the local newspaper, hoping they might share her story. The next morning, she set out with a larger table, a banner that read, "Help Fund a Dream," and her remaining cookies. She talked to neighbors, stopped joggers on the trail, and knocked on doors, politely pitching her goal to anyone who would listen. The money trickled in, and though it was slow, Sophie felt her confidence grow with every sale. Each box she sold was another step closer to her dream. But the journey wasn't without its hurdles. One afternoon, a group of older kids jeered at her from across the street, mocking her ambition. "Who's going to care about a kid selling cookies?" One of them called out, laughing. Sophie's chest tightened, her face burning with embarrassment. She turned away, pretending not to hear, but their words echoed in her mind. Despite moments like these, there were glimmers of hope that kept her going. The woman at the corner bakery offered Sophie a space outside her shop to set up her stand. An elderly man bought 10 boxes, saying, "My granddaughter is in college, and I know how hard it can be. You keep at it, young lady." Even local businesses started to take notice. One cafe agreed to let Sophie display her cookies on their counter, splitting the sales with her. Over time, Sophie's efforts evolved. She researched ways to market her cookies better and even set up a small website, with her parents' help, to take online orders. The late nights spent learning how to budget her earnings and reinvest them into buying more cookies taught her lessons she'd never learned in school. She stumbled often. Sometimes her calculations were off, and once she misjudged how many cookies she could sell and ended up with an unsold surplus. Each mistake felt like a setback, but Sophie refused to let them stop her. Through it all, she began to understand something profound. Success wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about resilience, about choosing to keep going even when the odds seemed stacked against her. Each day she stood behind her table, braving the cold and skepticism. She was reminded that her dream wasn't just hers. It was a story she was writing for herself, one box of cookies at a time. The biting cold of early spring lingered as Sophie set up her stand in front of the cafe that had agreed to host her. The banner, now weathered but still legible, fluttered in the breeze. Help fund a dream. Her cookie boxes were stacked neatly, her website URL scribbled on cards she handed out to anyone who stopped. The day had been slow. Few people passed by, and Sophie's spirits began to dip. She leaned against the table, rubbing her gloved hands together for warmth, when a familiar sleek Tesla pulled up across the street. Her heart skipped as she recognized Elon Musk stepping out, this time with a small entourage. He walked toward her, his face breaking into a smile as he neared. "Still selling cookies, I see," he said warmly. Sophie nodded, trying to keep her excitement in check. "Yes, sir. I've raised a little more, but it's still a long way to go." Elon glanced at her sign, then back at her. "Do you have a minute to talk?" Sophie blinked, nodding quickly. "Of course." He gestured for her to join him at a table inside the cafe. Sophie followed, her small frame dwarfed by the towering man beside her. As they sat, Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I've been thinking about you since the day we met," he began. "You're determined, resourceful, and you remind me of myself when I was younger. I started small too, selling software out of my dorm room, and look where that led." Sophie listened intently, her hands gripping the edge of the table. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but her heart raced with anticipation. "I want to help you in a bigger way," he continued. "What if we turned this into something more? Not just cookies, but a platform to inspire other kids to dream big and start early. You could share your story, teach them how to fundraise, and maybe even partner with local businesses to support their causes." Sophie's eyes widened. The idea felt overwhelming, but in the best way possible. "You really think I could do that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know you can," Elon said firmly. "I'll help you get started. Let's call it an investment in someone who's already proving they can make things happen." At that moment, Sophie realized this wasn't just about cookies or even college anymore. It was about the belief that her small steps could lead to something greater. The weight of that truth settled in her chest, but instead of fear, she felt a spark of courage she hadn't known she had. She nodded, her smile growing. "I'm ready." Sophie's world transformed almost overnight. The partnership Elon Musk proposed became a reality, and the idea of turning her small cookie operation into a platform gained momentum faster than she could have imagined. With his support, she launched Dream Funders, an initiative aimed at helping young people raise money for their goals, whether it was college, a community project, or even starting their own small businesses. The first step was professionalizing her cookie sales. Sophie worked with a local bakery, creating a signature cookie line with flavors named after aspirations: College Crunch, Dreamy Double Chocolate, and Ambition Almond. The cafe that had hosted her stand became her first official distributor, proudly displaying her story alongside the cookies. But it wasn't just about selling anymore. Sophie, with guidance from Elon's team, began hosting workshops for kids in her neighborhood, teaching them the basics of goal setting, budgeting, and entrepreneurship. At first, the idea of standing in front of a room full of kids intimidated her, but as she shared her journey, she saw their eyes light up with inspiration. Slowly, Sophie's confidence grew. The website she had started became the heart of the project. It featured resources for young fundraisers, success stories from other kids, and a space for people to donate or sponsor initiatives. To Sophie's amazement, local businesses and even large corporations reached out, wanting to be part of her growing movement. The success wasn't without its challenges. Balancing school, workshops, and her growing responsibilities pushed Sophie in ways she hadn't anticipated. There were days she felt overwhelmed, questioning if she was in over her head. But every time she faced a hurdle, she reminded herself of the girl she had been on that cold day at the corner, determined, resourceful, and full of dreams. By the time Sophie turned 10, dream funders had raised tens of thousands of dollars, not just for her college fund, but for dozens of other kids with big ambitions. The movement had taken on a life of its own, touching communities far beyond her small town. One evening, as she sat in her room, reviewing thank you letters from kids she'd helped, Sophie felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The journey had been unexpected, but every step had led her to something bigger than she'd ever imagined. She wasn't just raising money anymore, she was raising hope for herself and countless others. Years later, Sophie stood on a stage in front of a packed auditorium. The occasion was the annual conference for Dream Funders, now a national initiative with branches in schools and community centers across the country. Sophie, now a college sophomore, looked out at the audience. Young faces eager to start their own journeys, parents brimming with pride, and educators inspired to bring her program into their classrooms. She adjusted the microphone, her voice steady yet emotional. "I started this with a table of cookies," she began, her words met with murmurs of encouragement. "Back then, I just wanted to save for college. I didn't know if anyone would care or if my effort would matter. But someone believed in me, and that belief changed everything." The memory of that cold day and Elon Musk's quiet encouragement felt as vivid as ever. She often thought about how one moment of recognition had sparked a chain reaction, pushing her to dream bigger and give others the tools to do the same. Dream Funders isn't just about raising money, Sophie continued. It's about showing kids, showing all of us, that no dream is too small to start. Every effort counts, every step matters, and sometimes what begins as a single cookie sale can turn into something you never expected. The audience erupted in applause, the sound resonating like a symphony of hope. Sophie stepped back, allowing the next speaker, a 12-year-old boy who had funded his robotics project through her program, to take the stage. As he spoke about his achievements, Sophie felt a wave of pride that was deeply humbling. Later, she walked backstage, where Elon Musk waited in the wings. His face held the same encouraging smile she remembered from years ago. "That was a great speech," he said, his voice as calm and kind as it had been that first day. "Thank you," Sophie replied. "I still can't believe how far this has come." Elon's expression turned thoughtful. "It came this far because you didn't stop. You turned a moment of opportunity into a movement. That's something not many people can do." As Sophie left the auditorium that evening, she looked up at the clear night sky. The stars shimmered brightly, each one a reminder of the endless possibilities she now believed in. Her journey wasn't just about reaching her own dream. It was about helping others light the way to theirs. And that, she realized, was the greatest reward of all.